It's time for some good old-fashioned 90s throwbacks. Bring it on, Hollywood. Bring it! What's going on, guys, and welcome to my review of Plane. Thank you so much for choosing me to be your YouTuber for the day. I really do appreciate it. So after forcing to land his commercial aircraft, pilot Brody Torrance, along with a convicted convict, is sprung into action when a group of militians kidnap the passengers on board. First and foremost, I gotta say, of course, this was on my radar. Of course, this looked like a real good action film that was definitely in my ballpark. And since the start of when I first started watching the trailers, when the trailers first started popping up, that within itself, I could tell that there was going to be a definite 90s throwback to those good old-fashioned 90s action films that you would see Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wesley Snipes, Van Damme, Seagal, any of those act in. And that you definitely do get. I mean, I was not wrong there. But did that alone save it? Did this turn up that nostalgia beacon us 90s generation so missed? Hell yeah! That being said, let's start off with the positives for Plane. Again, with the 90s throwback, you definitely get a lot of that. There's definite moments in this movie to where if this had been released back in the 90s, like at least late 90s, it definitely would have been put out during the summer, because that old school 90s vibe, you definitely get that there, and that was very much extremely appreciated. You just get a lot of that vibe that a lot of movies that comes out nowadays don't give you. You never get that old school action, 90s throwback that this movie was plastered all over with. And for that, I deeply appreciate it. This reminded me, again, so much like if this was released in the late 90s, it would have been released in summer. And it would have had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wesley Snipes, or any of the other guys I just mentioned earlier. And it would have just been perfect. It just gave me that, nostalgia feeling that I was actually watching a 90s action flick. I really loved just that nostalgia period of this film. And like I said, if this movie would have been released back in the 90s, Schwarzenegger, Snipes, any of those guys probably would have done. It definitely would have made sense.
This is your captain speaking. Hold on to your ass.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wesley Snipes, Plane, in theaters everywhere, summer of 1997. The two main leads of Gerard Butler and Mike Colter was great. Gerard Butler, he was great. It's been 10 years, but he was great in Olympus Has Fallen, and so he is in Plane. It's been 10 years since that one, but that's kind of what that is. That's kind of what this is, comparing to Olympus Has Fallen. Not quite. Get into that later, but still, Plane was a lot like that film. Not quite 100%. But Gerard Butler, much like how he did in that film in Olympus Has Fallen, is pretty much the same here. You get this rough and tough as nails character that gets caught up in this dangerous, really bad situation. And again, comparing to John McClane, and I don't mean to do that. I don't mean to sound cliche or just silly about it, because I did the same thing with Violent Night. But he just goes John McClane on everybody. He plays this pilot that just gets thrown into this bad situation with these passengers of his aircraft, and it just goes down, but by nobody's fault. It's just Mother Nature, his dumbass storm. He was great, and you get Luke Cage and Evil's Mike Colter in this, which I think he's a pretty good actor as well. I don't see him that much. I definitely loved him in Luke Cage. Hadn't seen enough of Evil yet, but he was great in this movie. It's like a buddy team-up movie in a way. He basically plays this convicted convict that is just in a wrong place at the wrong time, and it was a pretty cool story arc for this guy as well. And he just teams up with Gerard Butler when everything goes down and these militias starts, scaring everybody and kidnapping these passengers, and they just kind of team up. And it was pretty cool to watch. I like the chemistry between the two. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it worked well for the film. They both, Mike and Gerard, showed their badassery. I'm not sure where these guys was in the 90s. They probably was still acting around that time. I didn't really notice, either of these, especially Gerard Butler, by the mid-2000s. But if this movie would have come out back in the 90s, I mean, most likely Schwarzenegger or Wesley Snipes or someone like that would have took the parts if it had come out back then. But again, if this was made back then and the same two guys was in it, it still would have worked. Again, going back to that 90s throwback that this film was plastered with. The bottom line, Gerard Butler and Mike Colter did a really good job. The chemistry was good. And again, they just showed that badassery toughness that most of the 90s action throwback actors had showed. And it worked. It really worked. The film definitely knew what it was in that sense, in that context. And you get the militias, the villains of this film, which was pretty good. You have the kind of like second in command of these guys, and then you've got the main baddie. You're not going to see no Hans Gruber or Simon or Cyrus the Virus. That's not what you get here, but they're vicious enough, and they're evil enough as an entity. And their savagery is enough to actually put them on one of my favorite villains of an action film. Like I said, it's not going to be as effective. This is still in the positive range because it just the level of evil, villainous acts that these guys did was enough for me to go, oh, okay, yeah, I can get behind this. Yeah, I kind of want to hate them. Because it makes me think just about all the real life stuff out there. It's like, yeah, there are people out there like that. So, yeah. Sad, but true, but fun in a movie context. The action was pretty solid. When it was actually going on, more about that later, but the action was pretty solid. You get shoot 'em ups, you get chases, you get some badassery moments. You get a guy walking around a corner and it's all quiet, and bam! He's getting his ass beat by an inch of his life. It's just all quiet on the forefront, and bam! Something happens. It's just little moments like that really makes you deeply appreciate on how this film played out with its moments. Just some cool moments that I really did appreciate it. Now we're to the part of the video that I was trying desperately to avoid, because you always want a movie to be like 100%, but they're never going to be 100%. There's only a few films out there that are 100%. But here goes with the mixed. I'll start it real slow because I really didn't have that much problems with it. Just little minor ones. So, beginning on with the mixed, I have to say that the passenger characters didn't really give me that much to go on. Now, they were good as a story. Some of them had their moments. There was one or two that had their moments, but I felt like throughout the entire runtime, they were just there to be kidnapped. They're there to be victimized. They're there to be saved. And to me, through most of it, it just didn't really give me a sense of caring about what happens to these people. I wish they would have gave me more. I really wish they would have gave me just a little more to grab onto, just a little bit more to say, oh, I really do care about these people. Please don't kill them. Please don't do this. Please don't do that. Just have them survive. And, just all of this stuff that I wanted to feel, I didn't really feel it because they didn't really give me that much. But again, they worked for the sake of the story, if that makes any sense. They're just there to be hostages. But again, it worked for the story. A few of them did have a few moments, but that's all that can be said about that front. And as for the negatives, I did roll into this with a little bit more higher expectations than I should have. To elaborate, I was expecting a little bit more action. Now, the action was good when it was going on, but I just wanted a little more. It felt a little bit too, sluggish. It felt like it was dragging its heels just a little bit. I wanted more Olympus Has Fallen, which is what I was meaning at the beginning of this video. I wanted more Olympus Has Fallen than what this movie has shown us in an action context. I wanted more. I wanted more explosions. I wanted more, just a little more pizzazz. Like I said, don't get me wrong, the action was good when it was going on. But I felt like the movie could have used a little more. Could have used a little more of that edge of your seat, all out, balls out craziness that Olympus Has Fallen actually was. But it was my fault. I do believe that if I didn't, walk in with that much expectations, I probably wouldn't even be mentioned in this point of the review. But it is what it is. Not saying I hated it. I'm actually going to go, if everything works out, I'm actually going to go a second time this week with my father, and probably a third time with my friend, again, if that works out. Only if I go with someone. But other than that, the film was pretty fun. Yeah, I still had a good experience. Despite all that, I still had a good time. The film was still a fun experience. It had its kick-ass moments, but for the most part, it was a happy accident. So Plane, what was your thoughts on it? Have you seen it yet? Was this your favorite 90s throwback? What are your favorite actual 90s throwbacks? What would you prefer seeing more in a 90s throwback context? Was Plane the perfect ride of nostalgia for you? Or was it a plain dud, no pun intended? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thanks once again, guys, for watching this. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. For those of you who are supporting my channel, I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and share the big four. Share this video and click that bell icon so you won't miss a thing. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.